So thank you so much for joining us today for our Ride to Provide virtual challenge. It is my pleasure to bring you to day 17. We are over halfway. What a miracle. As someone that is doing the ride as well, I can tell you I am pleased that we are in the home stretch. And I am also so glad that this didn't go over 8 days, but 30. So thanks to Hans for allowing us a little bit more time to get used to this bike ride. So today we are riding the second leg of day 5 from Trompon to, Scott can probably say it better than me, Lang Swan?
Yeah, Lang Swan.
Oh, nice. There we go. So that footage is going to start up in a minute. But I am joined today by Scott Stein and Julie Cross, and they are going to have a chat to us during the session so that they can help you punch out those kilometers. But just before I hand over to them, let me quickly tell you a little bit about Julie, and then I know Scott will delve into more of her story. So Julie has spent 17 years as a speaker, but having kickstarted her working life as a hairdresser in her teens, Julie's strength has always been motivating and inspiring staff and talking a lot and quite fast, we will learn. After completing an apprenticeship in the hairdressing industry, Julie quickly moved into management and leadership roles, and thanks to her gift of communicating and empowering others, into sales and training as well. It was in the capacity as a trainer that she discovered her passion and natural talent for speaking. So with a dream in her head and a passion in her heart, she started her own business. And having seen Julie speak personally many times, she is one of my favorites. So I'm so excited to listen in today. And Scott is a wonderful interviewer and has been doing such a great job helping us out over these Zoom sessions. So I nailed that timing. The vision is about to start, and I'm going to hand over to Scott and Julie to take us from here.
Oh, thanks, Ed. And welcome, everyone. Welcome to the afternoon session. You can see I'm on the bike as well, just to kind of keep the pace going, which is good. And for those of you that have done the ride in Thailand, day 5 is kind of a funny day. In the morning, sometimes your energy is really high, or sometimes it's really low after the rest day. And what I find is usually most people, the first leg is okay, because it's a bit exciting. Then you get off the bike, and on the second leg, that's where kind of you got to blow a few cobwebs out. So as you see in the vision, it's a beautiful ride today that we go through. And then we start hitting a few hills, not a lot yet, but just a little bit. But I'm really excited to talk to a very wonderful, sparkly person, and you'll find out a little bit more about that with Julie. So Julie, welcome.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, and congratulations to everybody doing this ride. You're all amazing. What a great adventure you're on. And yeah, we won't let any COVID stop us, will we?
That's right. That's right. It's kind of interesting with no rides. You know, we can't do any of the rides on the ground in Thailand. That's hit us quite hard at Hands, because usually we raise about 1.2 million. And again, all of that goes to the kids. So gotten really creative, and really the team at Hands, the management team with CT and everybody else that she's working with are pretty amazing. So it's pretty exciting to be here. But I know, Julie, you've been involved with Hands for a little while. Tell us a little bit about how you came across Hands.
Well, I came across it. Well, I guess I was watching from afar, and I guess my main introduction was through the Future of Leadership series. Being a speaker, you know, we would see that on the speaking calendar, and you know, looking from afar, I could see it was a fabulous event. And then, of course, you delved a bit further and saw what this event was supporting with this wonderful Hands group. And but before that, I actually saw Peter speak. We spoke at a conference together many years ago. And he shared his story then about the tsunami in Thailand and how all that got started. And I remember being profoundly affected then with his story and his vision. And then it would be many years later, I started watching from afar the Future of Leadership, and then realised its relationship with Hands. And, you know, from a speaking point of view, to be on that stage, it was like, wow, to get a ticket to be asked to speak on that stage was something very special. And it was and from what everyone was saying, it was special from many counts, not just because it was a wonderful stage to be on and being exposed to, you know, a wonderful tribe and wonderful people in the audience, sharing the stage with many other great speakers like yourself, but also because of knowing what you're contributing to. So I guess I put it on my little vision board in my head. And it was funny when I was speaking to Claire and Peter in Bangkok, and I was telling Peter this story that I had this, you know, in my head that one day I'd speak on the Future Leadership stage and be a part of this this hands group, but I never did anything about it. I kind of put it on my head and put it out there to the universe. And so, you know, when Darren Hill it was that spoke to Peter that sort of suggested that, you know, I could perhaps go on the Future Leadership stage. And then when Peter rang me one day to talk to me about it and invite me on the stage, in the back of my head, I'm going, I've been expecting your call. You know, I sort of put it out there for so many years. And it was like one of those career moments for me to be, because by then, you know, that stage had reached this status of that if you got invited to speak on the Future Leadership stage, then you were, you know, you were making it or you were on your way. Or so it was a really lovely moment for me. And then, of course, I got to know more and more about the wonderful work behind the scenes that we were, you know, in a way, obviously supporting by being on that stage, but just totally in awe of what Hands does. Amazing.
Yeah, and you've been to one of the homes as well. You've been up to Home Hug, and you also
Yes,
thought...
I got the opportunity after speaking in Bangkok for Future Leadership that we stayed on an extra few days, and the beautiful Claire took us up to Home Hug, and oh, what a soul nurturing, heart filling, oh, you know, oh, it just expands your thinking, your the way you perspective changing. It just was the most amazing experience. It just still brings tears to my eyes. It truly was, yeah, a wonderful couple of days for me, a highlight for me. It was incredible. And and to see firsthand the wonderful work, you know, to be in it and see it and to be with those children and to feel it, and oh, incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
But anyway, you know that. I mean, you know.
Yeah,
that.
that's right. But it's always great. Like every time we hear somebody who's gone there, it just brings back those memories.
Yeah.
And again, for me, with Hands being involved so long, just from what it was to what it's become.
Yeah, well, it must be an incredible journey for you to have been on that ride, so to speak, for so long. I'm seeing that journey. Yeah.
Yeah, but we want to find out more about you. So what was your first job, your first real job?
Well, you know, my first job, it was a real job, but it was part-time, you know, at 14, you know, we went out hard and fast. I know you worked on a farm, but my first real job before hairdressing was I worked in a service station. But that was back when they actually were service stations, when we actually used to serve, where we used to go and pump the petrol, clean the windscreen, you know, do all those things. It was actually a service station. So that was actually my first part-time job at school in a little tiny country town. You know, you did everything from cleaning toilets to making sandwiches to serving petrol, cleaning windscreens, and I loved it. But then my first full-time job would then be a hairdressing when I did my hairdressing apprenticeship in a country regional area.
And back then, did you ever think, or was it ever in your mind that you would be one of Australia's top female speakers? Like, not just female, but top speakers. Was that ever a thought in your brain?
Look, you know, it wasn't, but I can tell you, you know, and I have this idea about the way life works. And I used to have this dream. So when I was a kid, I lived in the bush, and we'd often have those wooden tank stands in the bush without tanks on them. And every now and again, there'd be one where the tank, you know, rusted out and there was no tank on it. But Scott, to me, it was a stage. So I used to get a ladder and put the ladder up against this tank, climb up, and I would perform. Now, I think I was singing, and everyone would be pretty glad that I don't sing, but I would be singing and performing. So I didn't know I was going to be a speaker, but clearly somewhere inside of me, there was a performer wanting to get out. So I know that for sure. And I remember, you know, watching things like the Oscars or our Logies, and I would visualise one day maybe being an actor or an actress and getting one of these awards. So there was obviously that sort of show person inside of me. So the way I see it is that you kind of have a dream. And that is like, you know, we all set goals. So a goal could be your dream. So you have a dream, and then you kind of, I believe, hand it over to the universe, which is the big director. Now, then you trust and you get on with your life and you do the best with where you are on the stage you've got. And meanwhile, the director makes some changes to the script, which was your dream. Because sometimes they know better than us. Sometimes the world or the universe or somebody else knows better. And so there's been some adjustments made to that original script. And so I am on a stage. I am a bit of a show person when I'm on that stage. But of course, I'm not singing. Instead, I'm, you know, sharing inspirational messages. And one of the things also as a kid that I used to get lots of great feedback from was my creative writing. And I was in little theatre. So when you think about that, when I now sit and reflect, the writing was on the wall, but I had to go through lots of rooms to become who I needed to be to get to that stage. And I think that that's a lesson for all of us in whatever we're doing. And I think with what we communicate as leaders to our children as well, is that you might not find your dream straight out of school, but whatever stage you're on when you get straight out of school, that is the stage that you have the opportunity to grow into who you need to be, to gain the skills, the confidence, whatever it is, to realise that dream, to suddenly one day be living that script or that dream, and also trust that sometimes it may look a little bit different to how it originally started. So that's kind of how I see that.
Yeah, it's amazing. Even if you think about COVID-19, and I know you've had some kids. I'm gonna ask you about the boys in a minute. And I've got some kids as well. But I was talking to one of my eldest daughters and about COVID-19. Because she's in uni and she's whinging a little bit about, oh, it's so hard, it's so different. And I said, well, it is. I said, but look at the opportunity. I said, right now, the fact that it's happening right now, you're at home. You got a place to stay. You still got food. It's not like you're out on your own and you have to move back. And it is that you never know. The universe kind of reminds you of some of those things over time.
And we're allowed to process it like that. And I think that's been one of the interesting things coming out of all of this as well, is that it is a lesson for us to see how our thinking really is. We think we've got a good attitude. But have we? Until we're being squeezed with a situation that challenges our thinking and the way that we process things, we don't really know. And so that's to me what this has felt like too, is that this pandemic is a chance for us to really check ourselves in all of that. Have we got the ability to understand that these things can happen around us, but we can choose how we react to it? We say that, we throw those lovely quotes and memes out on social media all the time, but what does it really look like to live like that? And so we've now had the opportunity, and that's what it's felt like for me too. And for our young people to, have those conversations, like you just said, with our young people, so that they can learn that this is a situation that's out of our control right now, but we can choose how we move through it and the attitude we take with it. And that's absolutely.
And again, I've shared the stage with you a number of times. I love hearing your story. Some of the people that are watching may not have. And I know that you've had a lot of adversity, a lot of curveballs thrown at you where you had to kind of do things different. Tell us a little bit about that. Again, you were a hairdresser, you were married. Tell us a little bit about that, when some of those curveballs were thrown at you, and what you needed to do to kind of move around them.
Yeah, sure. So, and this is the thing too, I guess, with these curveballs, is that one of the things I think that we forgot, and when I reflect on what I've been through, and I think this helped to get me through that adversity, was first of all knowing that there will be some. I think that to become attached to thinking that my life is going well when there's no problems or there's no challenges is setting yourself up immediately to have a life that's not very happy. Because when a minute a challenge comes along or a problem, we're going to go, oh no, my life's not working. See, I'm not doing it right. No, you're doing it exactly right, because it's through these problems and these failures, these mistakes, these big life events that we grow and we get more resilient and courageous, and we discover who we are in all of this. And so that's our growth. It's not often that we grow through times that are going well. That's when we actually lose perspective and become complacent. So that's the first thing, I guess, with all of that. And my childhood was like that, the broken family, the broken home, and, shifted 14 times in the 16 years I lived at home. So, home wasn't where the house was. Home was wherever the family was and the work was. So you learn immediately that you accept change, that, that we sort of say, oh my gosh, I can't change my child's school, well, how will they cope? Oh, they'll cope. They will cope. And so there was a bit of that in my life leading up to this point. But then I met my, wonderful husband, and, you know the story, but I moved to Townsville a single girl. If you move to Townsville a single girl, chances are you'll marry an army guy. We met at the Seaview session, Sunday session, 2-for-1 drinks with a bit of Velcro jumping, a few drinks, and we fell in love. And so he was kind of this beautiful, wonderful, gentle man that we moved from Townsville to Melbourne. He got transferred and we got married, had 2 boys, and, my life felt kind of perfect. He sort of was that guy that said, you follow your dreams, start your business, I'll support you. And so, we were living that wonderful life, and we were in that special space at that time where life felt pretty perfect. My 2 little boys were 8 and 4 at the time, healthy, strong. I was doing what I loved to do. We had lots of great friends in our lives. Life was fantastic, but we know that it won't always be, and we don't know what's around the corner. And so, You know, I woke up one morning and my husband could not walk and could not talk and had a massive stroke during the night, you know, and he was 42 years old. And I'm not saying I woke up and said, oh, well, you know, I've got this is fine. This is like, you know, no, I went into a spiral of devastation. And, you know, what do you mean he's had a stroke? You know, will he walk again? Will he talk again? What does this mean for my boys? I can't do this. Don't you do this to me. This is not what I was visualizing. This was not on my vision board. You know, how dare you do this? What did I do wrong? You know, so you go through all of those emotions. But I did learn that thing very quickly, that, you know, that with all the doctor's appointments with a stroke, we don't know when he's better. And this was a defining moment for me. You know, and I remember one day thinking that if nobody can tell me the date on a calendar when he's better, when do I get to be happy again? When do my boys get to be happy again? It's like, we need permission. I feel like this pandemic was a little bit the same, especially at the beginning. There was no date that we knew that this would be over. There was no date when my calendar would have work again. So when do I get to be happy? Do I waste all of this time then being stressed during this pandemic about when it gets back to normal? Or do I trust that it will get back to some sort of normality and trust that right now this is the normality? So best I find some happiness in amongst this. And that's what it was like with my husband at the time. I suddenly had that moment where I went, there is no date on a calendar a doctor can give me when he's better. So I have to find some happiness and joy in the moment that we're in, because this is our life right now. My husband is different and we have to accept that. And so we did the best through that. But of course, as you know, just after that, my youngest son, who had issues with his language and a few other issues that we weren't sure what was wrong. And he had the big doctor's appointment, goes to school, says we need him to get him assessed. And then Thomas is assessed with autism. So, you know, I had stroke in therapy, autism in therapy, stroke trying to talk to autism, autism trying to talk to stroke. I was needing some therapy, and I'm trying not to lose my mind and my other son in the process. But again, you know, do I delay happiness until he stops being autistic? There's no date that he's ever going to stop being autistic. So best I find some happiness in amongst his autism. And as you know, the story goes on that 4 years later, my husband passed away. And so we go back to devastation again. But, you know, once again, we call forth, you know, all of that stuff that we talk about and we know, and you're called forth to practice it. You know, death is a part of life. Grief is a part of life. You will not get through this life without having to go through that. So even just some acceptance around that already brings me to a calmer place. You know, I grab my thinking, and you grab your thinking, you change your thoughts, you lift your energy. You know, so, you know, I was challenged big time on learning how to be disciplined, to muscle up mentally. And when you muscle up mentally, you lift your energy, practice gratitude, all of those things. Because I had to lead my boys through this.
Yeah, and that's what I'm thinking. You know, I'm thinking you're still a mum. You've got all that going on, still the uncertainty and everything else. What did you do to kind of get through that? You know, some people I think would have a plan and a routine. Other people just bumble their ways through it.
Yeah.
What were some ways? Because that's pretty massive. You know, when
Look, it was bumbling. Yeah, Scott, it was bumbling for me, and I'm not embarrassed to say that, you know, and I didn't have any strategy. There was no, I mean, I was stumbling to some therapists to help me with Thomas' behaviour, because you know, when his grief got so deep, autism got so loud, and I'm talking about walls being smashed in, every window, you know, in my house had been smashed because he couldn't express his grief, and I would wrap him up in doonas some days. And so there was no, you know, it was like I had no time for a strategy, let alone my work, having a strategy for my work. And so this is where, you know, I think what that period of time taught me is about trust and faith. That every day I just had to trust that as long as I did my best in the moments I was in and tried to get through them the best that I could, that somehow it would all work out okay, that life wasn't out to get me. You know, that somebody wasn't out to punish me, that I wasn't being punished, that this was just life. And that doesn't mean that I did that well. Life was messy. We were messy, you know, and there were days that I felt like I wasn't making progress and wondering why I'd be picked. And don't think I didn't sit there feeling victim at times. I did. But all through that, Scott, I read. I have a library of personal development books. They became my absolute saviour, that I would always wake up early before the boys got up. And these were these great habits that I'd already formed, got me through. Read something inspirational. Always did that. You know, I kept a journal. I did that. And one of my it was a therapist that was working with me with Thomas's behaviour. One of the things she said is, because she knew I exercised, she said, don't ever stop exercising. And this is relevant now with all of you guys doing this wonderful work for yourselves as well as for hands. I think that we have forgotten the relationship between our physical well-being and our emotional well-being. And that when you exercise, you release endorphins into your system that lifts our energy and our mood. And so she said to me, don't stop doing that. So even when I couldn't leave the boys, when after Flash died, I couldn't leave the boys at home on their own, I would run up and down our street. We had a slight hill. So I literally would just run up and down the street, and I had a weight set at home. All those things became very important for me for my own well-being. And this is, once again, you know, I reflect on what I learned through that time and what it's taught me. So it was the worst time of my life, but I grew into the best of myself. I went to the worst of myself. Don't you worry about that. I saw the worst of myself so that I could grow into the best of myself. And so, you know, when I look back at that, of how I grew, how I learnt those things of trust and of faith and of the courage to keep getting back up through it, and that I don't have to see the end. I just have to see through today. That's what I...
Yeah, that brings me to a point, because the faith is massive. The question, and I was thinking about this week, you know, my kids are getting older now. One's 18, one's 16, one's 14. And I saw some parents with their little toddlers, and I just had a cheeky little smile, because when my kids were toddlers, I couldn't see them at the ages they are now.
Yeah.
I'm curious for you, when you're going through the midst of all of that, could you see beyond? Or was it really just, I've got to have faith and do the best I can?
Yeah, I couldn't see beyond. But, you know, it became overwhelming to even try, Scott, I've got to say. And that was one of the things I learned too. And I think too many of us become too committed to a goal, you know, and this is what we get pounded with. You've got to set a goal, got to set a goal, got to set a goal. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't set goals. I do too. I visualize all the time. But I think you've got to allow some flexibility in that goal, in that don't become so that suddenly, if you seem to be diverting a little bit because life's taking you in a different direction. And this happened to me through this time when I would look at what other speakers were doing, you know, and I'm thinking, oh, this person's going here and this person's going there. And I'd start to go, and what am I doing? You know, I'm sitting here in this neighborhood with my walls getting kicked in, and I should be, you know, I'm as good as them, and why aren't I on speaking on all these stages? And the universe would whisper to me, and where would you fit that in?
Yeah.
You know? Right now, what is important is for you to concentrate on bringing up these boys and doing a great job. Just do that every day well, and we'll take care of the rest. And I've got to tell you, Scott, I've moved far enough forward to see that worked, because literally the year that Jack moved out of home, my oldest, to join the army, you know, and I had less responsibility at home. Thomas had grown up through the worst of his negative behaviours, was becoming more independent. My speaking business exploded that year. And then the universe whispered to me, see, we always had your back. We always had your back. You just had to concentrate on the day we're in. And so often I think we're trying to get to somewhere over here, and we're losing the moments we're in. And all we've really got is the moment. And losing my husband taught me that. You know, he had a pacemaker in, and one day he walked in the house, and after hopping out of the car, for God's sake, and he walked in and he dropped on the floor. His heart had stopped. He split his head open. And in that second, he was gone. He was dead. And then his pacemaker started his heart, and he came back to me. But, you know, there's a heartbeat in it. And so why waste today? And that's one of the things I learned too. So I learned that I couldn't see my boys beyond that. You know, and if I'd only looked at Thomas, he was smashing walls and windows. He was throwing food on walls because he wouldn't eat anything. Today, Thomas isn't doing any of those things. Today, Thomas eats what we eat, and it blows my mind. So if I had tried to see him, you know, beyond that, I couldn't, because that, to me, he wouldn't have been anywhere near as high functioning because of what he was showing me. And what a great lesson that is. Don't ever, as leaders, you know, you've got to keep seeing the potential. You've got to keep seeing the possibilities. But it was because I stayed in the space I was with him, I believe, that he's doing what he's doing today. It was because I didn't lose faith that if I look too far in the future, what if he's still smashing walls at 18? What will I do with him? You know, I wouldn't have been able to keep functioning if I'd done that.
Yeah, and I saw your post, I think it was on Facebook, where it was a celebration post where he's eating kind of...
Real food.
You know, and I had a little cheer for you, because I know that you've struggled, you know, some of your stories. And I remember one of the photos you showed at Macca's. Where
that's right, because he only got him back. And he's sitting on the other chair.
And again, for many people that haven't been around people with autism to go, wow, that's amazing, and to see it and experience it. In fact, I remember you talking about the train.
Oh, yeah, the train story.
To me, the other thing, not only are you an incredible speaker, but your stories are just amazing. Can you tell
Oh,
us a little bit about what happened with the train? And this will help
oh,
people that aren't familiar with kids with autism about what it can be like.
yeah, sure thing. And that is the interesting thing. I'm actually writing that book now, and that's what I've taken time to do in this pandemic pause, as I call it. I haven't done the big pivot. I'm doing a pirouette, I say, where I'm writing my book. So, and it's about the first 18 years of living and loving with autism. And so, because there is so many lessons, Scott, you're right. And it was interesting for me too, when I was preparing for the Future Leadership series and taking really that leadership slant on my message, of realising how many lessons that I've had from Thomas with the way he moves through the world. And we talk so much about diversity in workplaces now and inclusion. And so Thomas is about that. It's about inclusion when it comes to autism as well. And celebrating the diversity that he brings. And so being able to reflect on that journey and seeing all of those moments and how he's taught me so many things has been incredible, and also with the way he moves through a community. So this particular story, it was, the train story, where Thomas had a particularly stressful couple of weeks. And with autism, there is that high anxiety, and there can be some behaviour that is present when they're anxious and they can't process things. So he had his wisdom teeth out one week. The next week he'd been working in a cafe all week doing a work experience. And so out of his normal routine, and this, it creates anxiety. Now, Thomas, when he's at home and is anxious, his behaviour is a bit more negative, but out in public, he manages to keep that together, but he just talks a lot about nothing. Thomas is obsessed by trains. He's obsessed by traffic lights and fans, and he talks a lot about these subjects, and I try to stay interested and be a good mother, but sometimes it's difficult. So this particular day, it was the Friday at the end of this stressful 2 weeks, I went to meet him at the coffee shop in Brisbane City, and we were getting the train home together. I could feel his anxiety as we were hopping on the train, I could feel it sort of rising in him. And so I knew I was going to be in for lots and lots of this on the train. But anyway, we hopped on the train and he turned left and I turned right. Now, don't think I'm a bad mummy. He does like time on his own, as you noted, Scott, that time we went out to morning tea, and he'll often go and sit at a different table. So this particular day, he turned left on the train, I turned right, because I thought he could probably do with some time on his own. I could feel that he's anxious. So I sit down and I get a text message on the train. And the text message has said, "Don't you think mothers should sit with their sons?" And so I'm like, and then I look up at him and he yells across the train, "Well, don't you think mothers should come and sit with their sons?" Evidently, everyone else on the train thought mothers should sit with their sons too. So dutifully, this mother went down and sat with her son. But as soon as I sat down with him, I knew this verbal stimming where he just talks about nothing would start. So sure enough, I sit down, and then a young fella sitting opposite us on the train, and on a train, you're like looking at each other like this. He's in his high-res gear coming home, and high-vis gear coming home on a Friday afternoon, and we're sitting there, and then Thomas starts, Mum, Mum, why do they call it Wooloowin Station, Mum? Why do they call it Wooloowin Station's a funny name for a station, Mum, isn't it? Why do they call it Wooloowin Station, Mum? Why do they call it Wooloowin? They call it Wooloowin because it's at the suburb of Wooloowin. Is that why they call it Wooloowin Station, Mum? And I'm like, yes, Thomas, that'd be why. Well, I think you can think of a better answer than that, don't you? He says. And the guy's looking at us going, he goes, Mum, why does Dackerman Station come after Petrie Station, Mum? Why does Dackerman Station after Petrie? Do they put Dackerman Station after Petrie Station, but Dackerman comes after Petrie, and Dackerman's a suburb that comes after Petrie, so they put Dackerman Station after Petrie Station? Mum, is that why? And I go, oh, Thomas, mate, that'd be why. Well, don't talk to your son in that tone of voice. And so the guy's looking at us going like, oh, and he goes, and so the guy's like, listening, yeah. And then he goes, Mum, what does this spell? VIRGIN. The guy's going, and I'm going, oh, and then he goes, IA, and I'm like, Virginia Station. Well, now the guy's slapping his thigh and laughing his head off. And then Thomas looks at the guy laughing and looks at me and goes, what the hell's he laughing at? And I go, Thomas, he's just loving our story. And the guy's going, yes. And I tell the story and I say, a lot of parents at that point could be choosing to be offended. And this is what I noticed too. Many people are moving through life looking for a reason to be offended. Don't you laugh at my son? Don't you realise he's autistic? But I've learnt now that in that moment, that he's allowing me, is inviting me to be fascinated as well, that he's fascinated with Thomas's, stories, and that to find the humour in it. We underestimate the healing power of humour. It's so important in the way it connects people. And so it reminded me not to get frustrated and to relax into the humour of the situation, and so and suddenly Thomas had a stage and everybody else is smiling along, and it's a wonderful moment. And as that guy got off that train, he looked back at me and he said to me, "Oh, I got to tell you, you do a wonderful job." So he took a moment to share some love with me. And then he also said, "And I've got to tell you, that's the best train ride I've had in years." And Thomas goes, "Have a great Friday, mate," And so it was one of those delightful moments where the diversity included all of us, and there was inclusion happen between those people on a train, and I just think we underestimate the stages that we have everywhere, and that was a stage that day on that train, a stage for us to all be more connected as humans, a stage for us, for him to learn about what autism presents like. How many times do you think he told that to his mates that Friday afternoon over some drinks about the funny train ride he had, and not realising that in fact he was educating his community about the way autism presents, and that we don't have to see it negatively, or it doesn't have to be scary, and in fact that it's a burst of colour in a beige world.
Well, and it's interesting you say that, because of course, just what was it, earlier on the weekend, we had the teenager with autism that was lost.
Oh my God!
It was fascinating, the to see that, but also what was amazing to me was there was an interview with his mother, and at the end when they found him, she was excited, but it was like the next day, I think it was this morning or yesterday morning, and she was amazing because she said that the love people had, and she said, we hadn't experienced that because my son with autism, people look at him funny, they don't understand it, they marginalize him, but people volunteered to help, which is amazing.
Right. And isn't it interesting again that it takes moments of adversity like that to pull a community together, and that's again why, that we're always going to have those moments of adversity. In my heart, and when they were playing Thomas the Tank Engine, I've just written a whole chapter in this book about Thomas the Tank Engine and how friendly he is to the world of autism. My son too loved Thomas the Tank Engine, and that's right. It does sometimes take moments like that educates or calls forth the compassion, the empathy. And once again, this is our challenge then. So and that's why I write so much about Thomas's journey, and I share so much, because that next time that we're at a traffic light and we see this young man talking to himself or looking at the traffic lights funny, maybe the first thought won't be judgment, maybe it'll be compassion, or that we'll look through a lens of, oh, there's that burst of colour in a beige world right there. What is he seeing that we're missing? How does he see the world that's so different to us, and what can we in fact learn from it rather than judge? And when we're judging, we're not being bad people. It's just questioning that first thought and wondering, just because they show up differently, is there any reason to judge? And so that young man, it doesn't know, has no idea how he brought, a nation together. And it was a heartwarming story to watch.
That was a good ending too, a really good ending.
Absolutely.
So when's the book coming out?
Oh, well, I'm 30,000 words in, so I'm just busy. I'm hoping towards the end of the year that it'll be done. So, yes.
Because I'm sure some people listening and watching will be interested in it. And they just go to your website to get it?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
juliecross.com.au.
Yeah, juliecross.com.au. Awesome. And I also know that you were on telly and things like that in the past because you were a bikini. Tell us about that.
Many talents. Oh, that was such an interesting time, Scott. So I'm a big advocate, and as you know, it's still very much a core foundation of my message about the relationship we have with ourselves, as leaders, or whether it's, and even with what you guys are all doing now with your writing, there is some self-leadership required. I mean, Emma talked about it before about, the legs and, when you're doing the hills, about having to dig deep, and, what we're saying to ourselves mentally and how we talk to ourselves is very important. And so the relationship we have with ourselves has always been important. And for us women in particular, I think the relationship we have with our physical body and the way we talk to ourselves about ourselves is extremely important. And we live in a country that very much lives on the outside. And I mean, we're seeing more and more of it, and I don't want to offend anybody when I say this, but it's this thing, you know, that we're doing more and more work and spending more and more money changing our outside to I don't know what to do, you know, I don't know what to do exactly. But I think we can lose ourselves in that if we're not careful. In the first place, we always have to start as loving us. We can't love others and lift others up if we're not loving ourselves and lifting ourselves up. And so this is this body image thing. So that leads into that body image thing. And so for women, we get bombarded constantly with all of this, on social media, you know, there's no picture you see anymore that's real. You get all of these filters that changes the way you look, and everyone's getting Botox and we don't frown anymore. And then we just, you know, you can just airbrush it all out. And so there's no image you see anymore that's real. So, you know, I joke, there's no wonder you get to the mirror and look in the mirror and go, what the hell is that? You know, because that's, you know, it's comparing it with all of that. So, and I'd gone to the beach this one particular day, and this is when I was 47. So it's about 4 years ago now, 5 years ago. And I, you know, 47, I was still wearing a bikini and, you know, going to the beach and doing my thing. And a few girls made a comment about my body in the bikini. Now, I'm not angry at them. And it was interesting when I had all my media interviews, they wanted to make it about the young girls. It's not about them. I don't feel any resentment towards them. The fact that they're judging my body means we're growing up in a world that teaches us to judge our body and everybody else's. And that's the problem. That's the foundational issue. But anyway, I got home and I had a moment. Don't worry, I had a moment when they were talking about my body that I felt like, oh, you know, and then I had to work on that, you know, and I love my legs, I love my legs, I love my legs. My sparkle is alive. You kind of got to work on yourself a little bit through it. That's called self-leadership. And so I got home though, and I thought, this is ridiculous. You know, here we are. We're a first world country. We have so much going for us. And yet as women, we're still so consumed with this goddamn body image thing. And every magazine it's related to women has got somebody's body on it. You know, oh, have they had surgery? Haven't they? Do they need to? Who needs a diet? Who's lost weight? Haven't we got bigger things to worry about? I think so. So I thought, what can I do for my tribe to inspire them in this space? And so I coerced my teenage son to take a photo of me in my bikini by the pool. He was wrapped, as you can imagine, especially when I put it on Facebook.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, he was wrapped. So, but the message was with the photo was, you know, that, you know, who should I apologise to for the stretch marks on my stomach from carrying two 9-pound healthy baby boys? I apologise to nobody. Who should I apologise to for the dimples on my thigh that you thought were cute when I was 2? They're the same dimples. They're just in growing up legs. You know, who should I apologise to for? This is my body. And of course, if I love myself enough, I would look after my body. And then whatever shape it is when I was treating it lovingly and looking after it is acceptable because this is me. And who decides what's better and what's worse? And haven't we got bigger things to worry about? And surely it's enough is enough. And so, of course, that post went up. And, well, I didn't know this, but then it got lots and lots of traction. And then I posted it on a Sunday night. By the Monday morning, it had 120,000 likes. By the end of that week, it had gone viral. And I was on morning radio, TV, Sunrise, New Idea magazine, online magazines all over the world in first world countries. And so it blew my mind a little bit. I was totally unprepared, of course. Somebody said to me, oh, how did you make that go viral? I didn't make it go viral. If I was going to make it go viral, I would have worn a sparkle bikini. My $20 stretch Kmart black bikini. But anyway, but you know, the fact that it went viral is indicative that there's a problem. You know, the fact that it got so much traction shows that we still have that wound. We still have that wound in our society. And I still see that we've got it. I feel like we're making such slow progress in this area. You know, we're doing more and more work, you know, to do what? You know, we're acting like aging needs to be cured and endured instead of embraced and celebrated. And I ask, what subliminal message does this give to our daughters? You know, what is the message that we're giving to our young girls? That it's not good enough what you've been given. You've got to change it. You've got to fix it. It's not right, you know. So I'm a little passionate about that subject.
No, it's good. Well, I was seeing somebody else, I think it was on Facebook or LinkedIn, and they did an article around with COVID lockdown, you know, they had stopped dyeing their hair, you know, because they couldn't go into the hairdressers. And it was a discussion and a debate about that. Who am I really? Does it matter if I show my grey hair because that's who I am, or do I have to have this image?
That's right. No, it is. It's an interesting thing, and because I do colour my hair, but I was saying that, and all my nice white hair. But I was saying when I started colouring my hair, it was for fun. So I'm not sure if it still is, like, because I'm a hairdresser. We did every colour. But now I'm going, oh, why are you really colouring it now, Julie? Be truthful.
And tell me a little bit about, I know some of your key messages, one of them is really about the sparkle. And every time I see you speak, you've got this sparkle, this energy anyways. Tell us a little bit about that, because I think that's a really important message.
Really is, does start in that foundational thing. And I guess, you know, the way this sparkle started, and with our business, I always believe that you should listen to what your tribe are telling you, or listen to what people are telling you. And when I first started my business, and it's actually now 20 years ago, and I used to wear corporate clothes to do my presentation. I always wore corporate. And then it was actually my mother's group, would you believe? I had my first son and I'd go to my mother's group. And one of the girls in my mother's group, and this is before you saw sequins anywhere. We see sequins in mainstream now. This was before there was not a sequin inside. But she had actually been out to the shops, and there was this little import shop that had these sequin shirts hanging in the window. And she came to our mother's group and she said, oh, Julie, I've just been to this little shop and I saw all these sequin shirts hanging in the window and they remind me of you and your personality. And I went, oh, and then it just, see, to me, that's a whisper. Yeah. To me, that's a whisper that we should listen to, that somebody is trying to whisper to you that there's a path you should take. So I then went and got the shirt, and I was doing a big presentation for a hairdressing company, and I suddenly realised that this fits in with my messaging, because it took great courage to wear my sequin, very uncool sequin shirt onto that stage with all of these very cool hairdressers. I stood out from the crowd. I knew I was being judged as I walked in. And so it took great courage, and that ties in perfectly with my message. To live a big, exciting life and to handle all the failures in life, you're going to have to be courageous. And if you want to be a success, you're going to be exposed. The minute I put that sequin shirt on, I feel exposed, because I know people are whispering like, Jesus, a bit dressed up, do you think? Oh, nice shirt. Wonder what the hell she's wearing that for. And you know what? The minute if you want to be a success, you're asking for more exposure. So there will be some people as you become successful that look at you and go, who do you think you are? You think you're smart. And so it worked in great with my message. And so it was a great way to physically present my message, and for me to put that in myself in that space consistently, of that feeling of what it's like for people to be looking at you like that. And that grows our courage, you know, to step into our space, to have the courage to own our space in the world. And I believe that we're all born with our sparkle, shiny and bright. You look at children, they're fearless, they're courageous. When they hear music, they dance. You know, when you're at the supermarket and you're two, you want something, you ride around on the supermarket floor until you got it. You got your sparkle on. And incidentally, they're often walking around in tutus and sparkly shirts just quietly. You know, so it was a great way to really to walk in with that all over me, that point that I'm trying to make. And so it's just stuck from there. So our sparkle is our courage, it's our resilience, it's our unique personality. It's knowing for sure that there is nobody else quite like you in this world. It's living your life with passion and ownership. It's all of those things.
Wow. And I also see, I know you keep growing, you speak at lots of conferences all over the world. You're writing the book, and I also saw, were you going to do some comedy, like a comedy tour or something as well?
Well, I'm going to do my regional roadshow, but yeah, I do comedy, and I did my adults only, so I do a combination of public events as well as my corporate speaking events. So I usually do them sort of in between what I'm doing on stages with my clients, and then I do my my public shows, and sometimes they're around that comedy theme. So I did my adults only one last year, and I'm about to do a regional, once regional Queensland opens later in the year, I'm going to do a regional roadshow, and comedy will be the foundation of that as well, because I just think that, I mentioned it before, but I just think that we've underestimated the healing power of humour and the way it can empower us. And I think in this politically correct world, and I'm all for political correctness, but in doing that, the pendulum swings too far one way, and we lose our ability to laugh, and we're wondering if we should laugh or become a little bit laugh sensitive. So lots of funny stories, and stories that we can laugh and learn with.
Oh, great. And just as we round up, because we're just now on our cool down, your final kind of message to any of the people that are watching right now, just a little takeaway.
A little takeaway. Well, I think it's always going to have to be that know for sure that you are where you are now. You know, the reason that you are where you are now is because you need to be. You know, the only evidence that we need, that we need to be going through what we're going through right now, is that we're going through it. so embrace that, and just be in your moments, live your moments. I think that's with this pandemic pause, I've been brought back to that, to dive deep into your moments, because once again, for me, when am I going to work again? And suddenly I'm wasting my moments living from a place of fear. Embrace your moments and embrace life. Like, it's just, life's too short. I just think that live with that joy and excitement that life gives us, and dive deep into your moments. That would be the takeaway for today.
Awesome.
Dive deep into your moments. You deserve that.
Oh, thanks, Julie. Thanks for sharing your wisdom with us today, and sharing your sparkle with us. So, and to all of the riders, thanks once again for joining us. Emma will wrap us up. But Julie Cross, thanks once again. Anybody that wants to find out more, again, head to our website, juliecross.com.au, because there's lots of goodies up there as well. So over to you.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure being with you all today. Thank you, Scott. Love chatting to you. Thank you.
Thank
you so much, Julie and Scott. It has been a pleasure to listen to you both. And Julie, I so appreciate what you're saying. I think sometimes we just need to remember to, as you say, live in the moment. And I was already thinking while this webinar was on, okay, as soon as it's finished, I need to go and be with my baby and hang out, and I've got so much to do. And instead I should just be enjoying the fact that I can finish a webinar and go and be with her. So thank you for the reminder of that, because sometimes that's what we need.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right, so guys, don't forget to log on to My Virtual Mission and log all your kilometers. We don't want you to miss any off. And you can always jump on the YouTube channel to watch these recordings or any of the Zooms that you've missed. Tomorrow in the morning, we're going to be doing one of our ride and chats. So if you feel like having a chat and riding in a pack, please join us tomorrow morning for that. And it's also Throwback Thursday, which means that we are going to, Julie, you could have worn your top for Throwback Thursday. Yeah, we want to see some sequins, maybe some afros.
Yeah.
So that's tomorrow. And also tomorrow afternoon, I'm going to be doing a live cross with Bantham Nam Chai in Thailand, and they're going to be showing us their home, and we're going to see all the beautiful faces of the kids. So really look forward to whoever can make it for that. But for now, thank you, Julie. Thank you, Scott. And everyone have a great day.
See you later. Thank you.
Bye, guys. Thanks.
Bye. Thank you.